let's just get started, because then I can make sure that I don't go over if I cheat out a minute or two. So this panel is called Trailblazing CEOs, and you'll learn more about these trailblazing CEOs. But the focus of the panel is about women leading in the outdoor space. So you'll hear us talking about women in a male-dominated industry. You'll hear us talking about the importance of outdoor spaces, both for ourselves and our communities and businesses. And also share some war stories, maybe, right? about leadership. So I am Diane Conradi. I have the privilege of sharing, I'm coming from Whitefish. I am obsessed with outdoor recreation and getting people, being in nature and getting people into nature. And I'm privileged to share the stage with these women who are inspiring in their leadership and are leading companies that have really impacted my life. So I'm going to start with a few little stories. Toby O'Rourke runs KOA Campgrounds. Laura Orvidas at Onyx Maps, and Amy Beck at Oboes. And I have a short vignette to share about each of them, how they've impacted my life. So first of all, Toby and KOA Campgrounds, I want to say during COVID, I have a mother with dementia, which is tragic. But KOA Campgrounds were the place that we went during COVID because they were safe. They had clean bathrooms that I didn't have to worry about my mom going in and doing something and not coming out. And they were safe places to get outside and for all ages. And I want to tell you that kind of saved our lives during COVID. Laura, of course I use Onyx for almost everything that I do outside. However, Onyx is the tool, our go-to tool that we use to plan our trails, right? So when we're planning trails in Whitefish or working in communities, yeah, we can go to the county GIS, or you can look at this layer, there's all trails, or this. Onyx is it. Like, it's the go-to place. You can see where the land is, you can see where the trails are, you can see who owns what land. It's super critical. It's a game changer in my life. And Amy, we haven't met before, but one time I came to Bozeman to look at their trail system, and I said, I'm sorry, this trail connection that you've been working on for 28 years, I can't do it. I've got some shoes that aren't going to let me get in the mud. So the guy in Gallatin County called me back and said, hey, what size are your feet? I said, 6.5, 7. And he said, okay, well, why don't you come over? Because you can take your dumb shoes off and put some oboes on, and that's their sample size. So come on over and pick out which ones you want. So I was able to get out in the mud and check out this connection. So that's how these women have touched my life personally. About me, I really believe that everyone needs a place to get into nature every day. And I have committed my career path both as an environmental lawyer and as a dreamer and a doer to making that happen. So I've worked as a serial founder of nonprofits, Whitefish Legacy Partners, Whitefish Trail, Montana State Parks Foundation, Montana Access Project, Outdoor Community Partners. You're sensing a trend here. I'm a serial founder. And the reason that I've done this is it's really important to get outdoors. And just to give you a few statistics, nationally, the outdoor recreation industry is a 1.1 trillion industry that's growing at a faster rate than the economy. In Montana, as of 2022, it's a $2.9 billion industry. 4.3% of the state's GDP. We are number 3 in the U.S. as to the percentage of our GDP that outdoor recreation is. And in 2022, that usage increased by 14%, and it translates into about 30,000 jobs. So we heard earlier today that the number of jobs in Montana, 30,000 of those are related to outdoor recreation. Locally, our trail systems generate revenue. There was a study in Whitefish that showed that the Whitefish Trail generates $6.4 million annually. Another study in Helena showing that it generates $4 million. It's people buying bikes, people staying longer, people camping out, and using the lands. And of course, we know about how many of you retreated to nature during COVID? Okay, that's what we're saying. It's good for your health, your sleep, stress, etc., and it just sort of happens when you get into nature. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to these folks to share their stories, both from the business perspective, but also the impact that they're looking to make in their businesses and in the outdoor recreation space.
Okay. Good morning. Thanks for having me here. This is really great. Thank you. So I'll tell a little bit about myself, and then I'll talk about KOA for context. So I grew up southwest of here in Sheridan, Montana. So that's a town of about 700 people, classic small town Montana, 19 kids in my graduating class. It was a really great place to grow up, and my parents still live there. And so I think the outdoors was definitely instilled in me from a very, very early age. But that wasn't my direct path. My career is very a myriad of experiences, which somehow brought me to camping. So I left for college. I went to school in the Midwest. I did come back for a brief time in Helena, and I started my career in software development. And then I moved to Chicago because my friends from undergrad were all in Chicago. So I continued my work in software development and then went into tech consulting for Deloitte, and then went to a small boutique firm, and then decided to get a graduate degree at Northwestern. And that's when I decided to focus on marketing. And I did CPG marketing for quite a while at companies like Sara Lee Corporation in Chicago, and then later in Denver for a company called White Wave Foods, which has had at the time, Silk Soy Milk, Horizon Organic Milk, International Delight Coffee Creamers, so brands you know, which is great. And my experience in tech really positioned me well beyond just doing traditional marketing and brand management to focus on digital advertising and digital marketing, which was just starting to be really hot about that time. This was about 2008. So I was in Denver. I just had my first daughter, and I was really anxious to get back to Montana. So we talked a little bit, or earlier today we were talking about that boomerang effect of sometimes you have to leave. I believe the lieutenant governor said that. And I was that person. I remember coming back my first fall break from college and crying as I drove over the mountains and saw the Madison Range. So I wanted to get home closer to my family. I'd had a daughter. My sister had just had a stroke, which is a whole other story. And I just wanted to be home. And lo and behold, KOA Campgrounds, headquartered in Billings, was hiring for a digital marketing director. I didn't even know KOA was headquartered in Montana, which I am assuming most of you don't know as well. We really do fly under the radar under the state. So I'm really excited to also introduce my company. But I came in to the company through marketing, specifically digital, but then was leading all of our advertising and marketing initiatives for quite a while before I moved into operations. And the CEO at the time had been with the company for a long, long time. 38 years was his career with the company, and it was known he was going to be retiring. And I really had the benefit of working very closely with him before his retirement. We knew that transition plan was happening, that I was going to become the next CEO. So I had the benefit of a few years with him to get prepared for this position. And I've been CEO now for 5 years, which has been great. So KOA Campgrounds, like I said, headquartered in Billings because it was founded in Billings in 1962. So you've probably heard of KOA, and that's because it was born and bred here. We have a lot of campgrounds in Montana. But internationally, we have 515 campgrounds in the U.S. and Canada. And for a time, KOA was in Japan and KOA was in Mexico. Right now, we're not working anything internationally, just in Canada. So out of the Billings office, which we just opened a new headquarters and built a brand new home office building, which we're really excited about. But all the corporate functions happen in Billings, so marketing, franchise operations. We are a franchise company, I guess I should mention. So of the 515 campgrounds, about all but 50 of those are franchised. And then we own the other 50. So we have operations, functions, franchise operations. We also have a really robust technology department because beyond being a camping company and a franchise company, we're also a software company. So KOA has its own proprietary software. So my background in tech has actually really helped me at KOA because we also, lead a software company that is industry leading. Let me see what else I could say. About myself personally, I have 4 children, 13, 11, 3, and 2. Decided to jump back into having babies in my mid-40s, which I don't know if that was the best decision. They're wearing me out, but it also presents, a lot of great challenges and a lot of blessings being a CEO with 4 kids. So our core values at KOA, one of which we have 5, but one of them is being family-oriented, and I think I'm at the best place to be able to raise a family and work at the same time. So that's my story, and I'll probably jump into more insights and stuff as we go through, but I'll pass it over.
Awesome, thank you. That's a super exciting story. And I grew up outside Chicago, so there's like a little Chicago connection here. And you might hear my accent if I hot dog or, do some things around here like you did with Allison this morning. I'm Laura, I'm the CEO of Onyx. I came to the company about 6 years ago. Dan, it was an amazing introduction, so thank you. Thank you for being a customer. Thank you all for being customers, for those who are. But today we have millions of customers. We're a tech company. It was created and founded and built right here in Montana. We're going to be celebrating our 15th year anniversary this year, which is super exciting. The company from when I joined is now 15x bigger in revenue over these 6 years. We now have 3 products. We have, and soon to be a 4th, the hunting product, which is our flagship product, which helps get people out, help them hunt. We have an off-road product, which does the same thing, provides rich content and trails for folks to off-road, dirt bike, ATV, snowmobile, and keep them safe. And then we have a human-powered product, Onyx Backcountry, where we've released some very interesting data on snow to try to keep backcountry skiers in low angle outside of avalanche terrain, as well as provide them information on trails, climbing, mountain biking, hiking. And my career journey, I'll talk about this more in the lessons, but if you had asked me when I was, any time in my 20s to 30s, what I wanted to be, it would not have been a CEO. In fact, when I looked at people who were in management or CEOs, I was like, they spend all their time in meetings, and that sounds like a total buzzkill. Like, why would I ever want to be a CEO? But yet, here I am, and I will talk more about that on my career journey. But in addition to being a CEO, I'm also a wife. I'm also a mom of half the amount of kids that Toby has. And I'm a lover of animals. Instead of other 2 children, we have I don't know how many horses and 10 chickens that my dogs that are bird dogs try to eat. I don't recommend getting bird dogs and chickens and keeping them on the same property, but alas, that's one more thing to manage. But it's really incredible to be here today. And throughout my career, I have never been in a room where there has been this many women. And when I came in this morning and I poked around the doors, and I saw everyone here, I was like, this is awesome. There's just really good energy, and I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited for all of you. This is the Trailblazer panel. Like, the fact that you guys are all here today, like, you are also Trailblazers. So that's my little intro. Over to you.
Well, thank you. I am so honored, and it's such a privilege to be here. My name is Amy Beck. I am the president of Oboz Footwear here in Bozeman, Montana, just down the street a bit. And I have been here in Bozeman as the president of Oboz for about 5 years. I'm also from the Midwest, which we all did not speak about, so that's pretty interesting. I'm from Indiana. I grew up in the Midwest, born, raised, and to a single mom. I'm an only child, and my mom worked really hard to give me the opportunity to be a strong, confident woman until I left home. And then she wanted me back. But in my journey, I'll share a bit of it, has not been a straight line. I think that, again, like Laura said, I did not wake up one day and say, I'm going to be the president of a company. I did not even know, honestly, about the outdoor industry growing up in the Midwest, in a town in Indiana. That was outdoor recreation, was getting on your bike and, going to the mall. And so when I was in the fashion industry for about a little over a decade. And my journey that led me to outdoor, I met a boy, and he exposed me to my first time ever out west was in the 90s, and I had the privilege of going to Aspen, Colorado, and putting skis on my feet for the first time, and I fell madly in love with the mountains, and couldn't not think about it when I went back to my job in Chicago in the fashion industry. So I was able to start to pursue that in both life and in my career. So I started poking around, learning about brands. I've always been a brand advocate, a brand builder, a seller of brands, a seller of ideas and adventures. So to do that in the outdoor industry seemed like what an incredible opportunity that I didn't even know existed for half of my life today. So I was able to pursue a career. I was able to move to Colorado in the early 2000s. I've been in the outdoor industry now 20 years. And again, that has not been a straight line journey. I have been able to work with some incredible companies in this space. I worked for Smartwool for about 11 years. And it was an incredibly pivotal time in my life. I was in my early 30s, and it was a small entrepreneurial company. And so, yes, I had to lead, but I also had to fill out the FedEx form and roll up my sleeves and pack the boxes and set up the trade show and run and get my boss maybe something, from the printer, all the things. So it was an incredible pivotal moment for me to understand the full context working in a business. So my role was in sales, but my role also was in people management, in process management, in building processes that didn't exist. And it was incredible. So I have now had the opportunity to be in the industry now for over 20 years and find my path. Like you, Laura, I never said, even probably a decade ago, I would not have said that my number one goal was to be the president of a company. I always put myself, and I think I don't want to project myself, but I think a lot of us women, are like, oh, it's okay, I can step back a little bit. I liked being the number two. I liked being the dependable, consistent workhorse that I was. I never saw myself as the leader that others saw me as, which is a really big life lesson for me, that sometimes self-talk is incredibly detrimental, and opening up yourself to the opportunities that are in front of you and the people that are going to support you and be your champion, especially when you're not in the room, are those people that can really help you grow and evolve as a leader, and both in your personal life and your professional life. I don't have any children. I have a dog, a furry friend, and but I am so committed to the growth and development of my team. And so I won't say they're my children, but they're my passion, and they're the reason I get up every morning to do a good job, because their life, their livelihood depends on me being a good leader, a good listener, and a good advocate for them. So more about Oboes, just quickly, we've been in business since 2007, founded here by a man named John Connolly, who lives here in the community. He saw a way to different and better, and wanted to build a company that maybe just was against all the norms out there. So we still have that trailblazing. I couldn't say no to this panel, because our vision is to empower the people of the world to blaze their own trail, whatever that may be. We are huge advocates of outdoor, both for mental, physical, and community. So every single thing that we do is to encourage and get people outdoors. We have about 45 people here in Bozeman. We have about 5 people in Vietnam, and we have people across the United States and Canada representing our brand, our mission, and our values. And most every conversation we have is tied to Bozeman, because our company is called Oboes, Outside Plus Bozeman. It's not Oboz, which we have to tell a lot of people often how to pronounce it. So more on my journey and lessons as we move through the conversation, but I appreciate you having me here today.
Thank you. So I will, ooh, here's my alarm. So I think what we'll do is, we'll save some time at the end. I know that you're going to have some questions, but I think we'll just have a conversation. And one of the topics that came up for us was during our was how do you thrive as a woman leader in a very male-dominated industry, and maybe talk about that a little bit.
I'm happy to start. I'm always happy to start. Just say yes. So one of the things that I was thinking about in my career journey was, like, what were the things that helped get me to where I am today? And so I want to start at, like, the very beginning of my job outside of college. And let me paint this picture for you. My parents didn't go to college. Their whole mission was to get their kids to go to college. And college for that meant that you would get a good job that would pay the bills. And that was what success looked like, that you were independent and you can get a job. But they did not know how to navigate the world. And so when I was graduating from college, I was like, I kind of fell off the turnip truck. Like, I was very unsophisticated. And I entered the workforce with a resume that looked something like junior zookeeper, manager of a yogurt shop, summer nanny, and a biology degree. And I had this, like, vision that maybe someday I would be a physical therapist, and I arrived at this late in life, and I didn't have a job after college. So my plan was, like, to go to graduate school in Arizona, because I grew up in Chicago, and it was kind of cold, and Arizona seemed cool, even though I'd never been there. And I was going to, like, wait tables and take some classes, and then eventually enroll into physical therapy school. And I have a sister who's 17 years older than I am, who had gone to Harvard Business School and was out in Boston doing crazy things, and she thought that that was a terrible plan. And the next thing I knew, I found myself at a management consulting firm. But I wasn't a consultant. I was an administrative assistant that, this is, like, going to date me, but, like, back in the day in consulting, people would hand draw graphs on a piece of paper, and then they would hand it to me, and I would transcribe that graph onto a PowerPoint slide. And this was my first job out of college, and because I knew how to use a computer, I apparently was qualified. But I had this, like, break where the firm actually went through a horrible time. It was a new consulting firm. They were just building up this client base, and they had a huge client that represented over 50% of their revenue. That client dropped them. And so the firm wasn't very big, didn't have a diversity of clients, had all these people, and they decided they were going to be committed to their people and not lay them off. And I got the opportunity to participate in the associate consulting training class. And so I got this exposure to what consultants did on the business side, and I just found it super interesting. And so, fast forward a little bit of time, I got to do this training. I'm still doing my slides. Training ends, the firm is picking up, and there was, if folks have worked in consulting, in my consulting firm, there was a little bit of a divide. Like, the consultants were the smart people. They recruited them from Ivy League institutions, had to have like a very high GPA on your resume. The administrative side had a different recruiting path, and there was no crossover between the two areas. But like, I didn't know any better, so the slide stuff was kind of boring, so I would do my work. And then I had been through training. So I would go around the office and I would ask every single person, like, do you need some help today? Can I do anything for you? And the job that everyone hated was making cold calls for customer surveys. So guess what job I got? I was the customer survey person. And I became known as in the office as the person who would like do the work that nobody else wanted to do. So that's lesson one. Career stuff, do the work that nobody else wants to do. That was perfect for me because I actually didn't know anything about business, but when you do customer interviews, you're doing primary research. There's nothing you need to know other than the information that you're gathering. And so I was able to take that information and have a unique advantage that I could give to people in the office through doing a job that nobody else wanted to do. And I had the chief administrative officer would meet with the teams over time, and they met with me. And again, I kind of didn't know how things worked. And he was like, well, what do you want to do with your career? And I was like, I would like to be a consultant. And you know what he told me? That I couldn't do it, that was not acceptable, that I couldn't be a consultant. And I left that meeting saying, like, I don't think that sounds right. Like, I was in the training with these people. I think I could do this job. And so I kept working through my customer survey pieces, and eventually one of the managing partners realized graphics was a bottleneck for the company. So he was like, I could have this person on my team. She could do all the work that nobody else wants to do, and I can have my personal assistant do all of the graphics for me. And he took me under his wing and started taking me into client meetings. And fast forward another 18 months from the time that I was told no, I was promoted into the consulting group. I made it all the way up to a senior associate, and the firm had this award for the person who goes above and beyond. And I had won that twice, the first time that had ever happened in the history of the company. And if I think about, when I tell this story, I'm like, God, was that really me? Did I do that? I had to do a few things. One, I had to say yes when other people said no. Two, I worked my butt off. I worked 60, 70 hours a week because I was so behind everybody else who was part of the company. I didn't have the same education training. I didn't have the same experience. Like, I had to invest in that, and I had to get ahead. And I didn't let someone discourage me. And I don't know why I didn't let someone discourage me, because I wasn't like I was like brimming with confidence or like had all of this other components. I can't explain that to you today, but I think, a lot of people take no as a first answer and never go farther. And I think the ability to say like, no isn't necessarily no. If you want to go do something, you just have to like figure out a different way to work around it and keep moving forward. And for me, that was learning and trying to show that I was valuable to the organization. And I think those are some of the lessons that I think have served me well throughout my career in different places, to do the jobs that no one wants to do, to become an expert in something where I can add value to the team and them are differentiated, and to keep learning. Mic drop.
Amy's looking at me, so I'll go next. Similar insights, so it'll be pretty repetitive. But a couple of months ago, a company asked me to speak to their women's network, so I put a lot of thought into the same question. And I came up with this little formula that I think has served me in my career, and it was speak up, stand out, and step back. And I'll cover it very briefly, not the 45 minutes I did before. But the speak up it was just very instilled in me early in my career. If you're given that seat at the table, you're supposed to speak and participate. And I think a lot of times, particularly early in our careers, you're brought in the room maybe to learn and observe, but you really gain the credibility when you're offering input, right, and value. And I'm by nature very, very introverted and very quiet, so that was something I really had to work hard at. But I had a boss give me that feedback. Like, if you're in the room, you should be participating. So I think that speak up. And the other part of speak up is where a big turning point in my career at KOA happened, where I think which boosted me to the top of the list to become the next CEO, is I wasn't afraid. I went forward and told the CEO at the time that they had made a bad decision on the path they were headed with their software. No one had spoke truth to power. And I was just this very young marketer who they had dismissed as knowing anything about this part of the business. When I came in and said this is the absolutely wrong path, he was really angry about it. But our relationship really soared after that. And I think he felt a lot of confidence in me, just being able to say, this isn't the right path. So I think speaking up's one. Standing out, it's very similar to what you're saying. When I was in marketing, I was trying to really figure out how to elevate my career. I had come across a book, and it had given me this feedback that you need to find what you do really well, better than anybody else, and become an expert at that. And so for the way I stood out was becoming a master of digital marketing at that time. It's probably surpassed me now because I've been out of the game a little bit, but I was a master of that, and more so than anybody else in our company, and then that's what propelled me forward. I became a student of that craft. I learned it, I applied it. And now in my career, even though I'm CEO of this company, it's extremely male-dominated industry in the RV industry. There was no women in leadership in the camping side or in the RV side when I came into the company, and there still isn't really a lot of female leaders. And so to get taken seriously, again, as a young CEO from the camping side, I mean, all these older white men in the RV industry, my niche was really knowing data. I know everything about our business more than anybody else. I could go to toe-to-toe because I do a ton of research. We invest in a lot of research at KOA. And then I use that to generate insights and do a lot of work on strategic foresight and future thinking, and they're eating that up. And that gained us the seat at the table as a company and me individually. So the standout is key, to know what you do well and then do it better than anybody else. And then the step back, I think that speaking to us at this phase in our career is, yes, I lean in hard. But the step back really is about being advocates for other women. So I was the beneficiary of really strong advocates in my career, both female and male, and I like mentors, but I really like advocates, because advocates will speak up for you when you're not in the room. They will get you access to opportunities. They will make sure you get on projects. They will make introductions. And I think part of the step back is being advocates for other women and allowing them to step forward. Also, delegation. At this level, it's really, really, burnout's a big deal, and I hope over the next day or two, we're talking about burnout because it's real. I'm in the throes of burnout, I think, at the moment. And it's important to step back a bit and regain some balance and control, or otherwise we are gonna lose women leaders. We're seeing that in the data. A lot of women are stepping back and stepping out instead of just stepping back because it's tough. And then, that's okay, that's probably enough. But it's really about delegation, right? And stepping back and allowing, I know what I was gonna say. The other thing, we're talking about the top women stepping out. The McKinsey did a really great study on women in the workplace, and I loved this term they coined about the broken rung. So it's not just about women breaking the glass ceiling, but it's about giving women those early entry opportunities. And I think that as women leaders, we need to identify early opportunities for women to start their career, their first job. There's all these statistics about how women don't get that first step, so it's really hard to break that ceiling if you haven't had that first step on the ladder. And so that's part of stepping back and allowing other people to take that step up and creating those opportunities for them.
Wow. Incredibly inspiring. And I think it's interesting how we all have similar stories. And so Diane, you ask about, being women leaders in a very male-dominated industry. That outdoor industry, when I started, I was almost always the only female in the room. in the boardroom, in the account meetings, in most meetings I was in. We had no leaders, no women leaders in our company, and no women leaders in our industry. My guidance and feedback and awareness is that has changed dramatically. It has definitely gotten much better. I'm part of an organization that is a parent company called KMD Brands, and we have 3 brands under our portfolio, Oboz being one of them, Kathmandu being the other one out in New Zealand, Australia, and then Rip Curl, which is a surf brand out of Australia as well. And I'm in the situation where I'm one of 3 female CEOs leading the 3 different brands, which is incredibly inspiring for me when, 2 decades ago, I was the only woman in the room. So progress is being made, but I had a similar story to Laura's where in my early 20s, I was working in the fashion industry, and the CEO of the company at the time was a lovely misogynistic man who I got to ride to the airport with. So I thought, wow, what a great opportunity to speak up and show up and express to him what my long-term aspirations were, which were to move within the organization and drive leaderships, lead something. And he very, very disrespectfully looked at me and said, "Oh, Amy," he said, "you're very good at what you do, but you'll always just be Amy from the Midwest." And I will tell you, instead of, getting upset, I got mad. And my mission in life after that moment was to prove him wrong. And I was able to then, that was my early career, and I was able soon after that to be part of an organization where I did have male advocates and people that did stand up for me, that took me under their wing. And so I was able to see that when you work in an environment where everyone is supportive and in supporting you, you're able to grow and build that confidence and know that you do have the opportunity to break through some of those stigmas. Some of my lessons in leadership and that I share with most anyone who will listen is, I think being curious is, and I think we've all talked a little bit about that, but being curious, asking questions, raising your hand when you don't know the answer, that is vulnerability, and it is also a way for you to grow and expand your horizons and career. I also have a really strong belief in having your own personal board of directors, and those are male and female, advocates that you can lean on, that will tell you the truth, no matter how hard it is to hear. They will give you incredibly candid feedback. And we talked about this right before the panel. Feedback is a gift, only if you use it. And use it. And some feedback is feedback you won't use. Some feedback is feedback that will actually shape who you are as you go through your career. And I also say self-awareness is the biggest gift you can give yourself. And so being really open to understanding, where your strengths are and where your opportunities are, and also recognizing that if you are in a leadership position as a female leader, you don't have to know everything. If you are vulnerable, aware, what you do is you build your bench around you, and that is the essence of incredible teams. And that is one of my most passionate things around doing the things in leadership, is that you get to build incredible teams that are able to stand up, show up, and step back appropriately, but also, build a community with which you can all move forward better together than individually. And so those are some of my lessons as I've gone through my career. And I think we all mentioned it. I love working with women, but I also love working with men that understand the importance of diverse leadership, diverse voices in the room, and understand that everyone's voice is equal, and it's not the loudest voice or the voice that discounts what you're saying or the voice that doesn't listen to what you're saying. I think that is such an incredible, important thing. If you find yourself in a room with people that are open and listening and supportive, you're all gonna be better for it.
Wow, thank you. I'm a little bit verklempt right now, speechless. I find this discussion and discussions like this to be so hopeful in a time where we can be slightly bereft of hope. So thank you all. I'm going to open it up. We have a few minutes for questions. And if you don't have them, I do. So anyone out there? Is Candace out there? Is there a mic? Is there a mic? You have the mic. Okay. Anyone? Yep, over here. Sorry,
Hi, Jen Hensley. Thanks for being here. My question specifically is for Toby, because while you were speaking, I had this pop into my brain, and I'm sure that you all have had this experience as well. Toby, your industry, I can imagine, has a lot of old guard. We've done this for decades, right? I've camped actively, used KOAs, thank you, and a lot of others. And, there's some retirees that are really used to doing things the way they do it, and I can only imagine that a young digital marketer coming in and showing them how to do things is going to ruffle a few feathers. Talk to me a little bit about how you walk into the rooms acknowledging that you're the voice that they probably don't want to hear from, and how do you help soften that for them a little bit, I guess? Or do you?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. And I'm glad that it's good to see you. I saw you in the crowd. I'm going to tell a little story about Jen here in a minute, too. Yes, so I have two stories to that, which are kind of funny. One of which, when I was new leading the marketing department, we had just launched this digital app. And the CEO at the time, was a great dynamic CEO, but we'd put him on TV. I was in charge of getting him on TV, right, on media interviews. And he would only want to talk about how we roast marshmallows. And I got in this argument with him, and I'm just like, I need you to talk about the app. And he said, nobody that camps at KOA will ever book a reservation on a mobile app. This was 13 years ago, and I'm like, and 70% of people book reservations online, and through, a lot of that's through the app right now. So, and I just proved him wrong, and mainly that was through data. Knowing data, knowing customers. That's kind of my thing, is knowing everything about our customers, customer habits, and the data behind it to present the case. And the other funny story I had to build on is our head of franchise services stepped down. This was probably 6 years ago. And when I was hiring the replacement, one of the old guard franchisees, someone who had been in the business for 50-some years, came in to meet with me in Billings. And he sat down, and he's just like, I just don't really think a woman could do that job. And I just looked at him, because they'd always been men, but I'm like, I'm a woman. I am a woman you're talking to. And he said, well, you don't count. You've proved yourself, but you can't hire a woman for this job. People won't respect a woman in this position. And I said, well, obviously I don't prescribe to your attitude, perceptions of gender or age or, it's the best person for the job. And we have had a woman in that position ever since. But so I just always thought that was so funny. But yes, there's a lot of old guard mentality in our business, probably all of our businesses. And for me, it's really just proving it with data. Because I can talk till I'm blue in the face. I could talk to that CEO that about digital, who's on it, whatever. But he's not going to believe it until I can present the case with data. But I did want to share one thing about you, because I do know that we wanted to talk a little bit about failure up here. And no, it's not about you. Okay, I'm going to fix this. So I was on a panel, this was about 6 years ago, and Jen Hensley asked me a question. She's like, what? And I was really proud of myself, all the things I've done. I'm very achievement-oriented, and she's like, what have you failed at? And I reflect on that all the time, because I said, I don't fail. I don't. And I realized it's taken me a lot to unpack that. It was like this therapy moment. And it made me realize that I'm not really modeling for my kids or for my team if I'm so focused on perfection and achievement. And I've really tried to adopt that progress over perfection, probably since really unpacking that moment that I couldn't even give you an answer. Now I could probably tell you lots of things I failed at. And I think that that's just really important for me personally in my career to realize, like, sometimes it's just taking steps forward. They don't have to be perfect steps. And you might have to take a few steps back and you'll get it right. And in the long run, you're running that marathon. So thank you for that. It's really good to see you. I think you had some things to add on that.
I've got things to add. I've got one thing on your how do you show up, because I just told you I'd be an expert, and so at my Amazon career, which I did not talk about, but I worked there for a long time, I was the expert in data. And so I would go to these meetings and someone would say, 30% of our customers, I was like, that's 32.5%. And it would go on and on, like, oh, this happened. Like, well, it's actually 15.2. And that was freaking annoying. And I was showing up in a really negative way, but I thought I was being useful. I was helping to show people the right numbers. And I thought it was awesome. And one of my managers, who was an alpha male and did not like to be embarrassed in front of others, did not appreciate that I was correcting these little things. And he pulled me aside and he said, hey, listen, when you do this, you look like you don't understand the strategy because you're arguing about 1.5%. That's irrelevant to the conversation. And you're making me look bad in front of our partners like I don't know what I'm doing. And that feedback is a gift, sometimes hard to unwrap, but that feedback changed the way that I thought about being useful in the room. So when you go to approach a situation where you have something to say, it's important to say it. It's important to use data. It's important to understand when you deliver that feedback and how you do so in a way that makes others around you smarter, better, and not do the thing that I did, which was look like an annoying person who didn't understand the strategy and interrupted people. So anyways, that's just a little learn from me. That was a good one. So we're just speaking of failure for a moment. Failure feels like a really bad word, right? Does anyone wake up and be like, I'm so excited to fail today? No one does that, right? It kind of feels like maybe I'll do that tomorrow, but today I'm going to do something else. But I actually think that the word failure is not the right word, because if you learn from mistakes, you're not failing. You are winning. Einstein said he failed 99 times before he got the 100th thing right. It is just part of the world and part of the process. No one says oh, Joe, you're learning to ski and you fell down. Well, God, you failed. You're gonna never make it as a skier. It's just it's part of life. It's part of learning. And so I want you guys to wake up every day and be like, I'm gonna learn something today. And if it's because the thing that I get doesn't exactly work, let's call that life. Nothing works on the first time. So let's get up, let's learn, and let's not fail, because we can only fail if we don't learn.
Very wise.
Thank you.
Yes, it reminds me of the, lean startup, build, learn, pivot. Let's call it pivot instead of fail. Do we have another question? Did we have one? All right,
Hello, thank you,
we are
ladies.
out of timer, but we'll do this one, and then you in the back. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'll be fast. My name's Tiffany. I'm with Fleet Response. I'm the director for the state of Montana for disaster restoration. And I'm at a point in my career where I have a team underneath me. And, you got to move up the ladder. It's a very male-dominant industry as well. And what was the pivot point, or what did you do when you were doers, right? As women leaders, we do, but we have to get to a level where we become a more strategic thinker. And we have to look at the bigger picture of what's ahead of us, the forecast, all that. So how did you guys go from do to become a better strategic thinker in your career as you're moving up the ladder? Does that make sense?
Well, that's a loaded question. So we can
It is.
maybe
That's a
take
long
your
one.
moment to answer in a sentence, and
I
then
think
we'll wrap
it's
it
a
up.
hard moment, right? I mean, and I'm still in that do. I think it's part of who we are, and it's also part of what's so great about women leadership, right? Because you're consistent, you show up, you're dependable. But I do think you have to remove yourself from that and it's delegation. Let your team have that. And make sure you might have an answer and a way you get somewhere, and someone else might do it completely differently than how you do it, but you get to the same result. My guidance, and I'm still do this every single day and learn every day, is step back when you might want to step in. And I really love that about you. Let people have a voice in the room, and then do those coaching moments, and you will start to see the opportunity, giving the people that have the voice the opportunity so that you can step out of that, be less of a doer, and start to be a bigger thinker.
I got one more thing to add. Do your boss's job once. And so my manager used to run this like QBR for all the hard lines, and I had I had a moment where I had a little extra time, and I was like, I want to run that. I want to put together the meeting materials, and so I'm going to step into your job with your help, and I'm going to do that work as practice to get better. And I knew I had the time and the bandwidth to do it. So I think there's ways to practice it. Sometimes you're just pushed into it and you have to do it. But you can prepare yourself by signing up for kind of small project-based things where it's not like a long time commitment, where you put yourself in their shoes, and then they can help get you the way there, and you can learn along the way.
And I would recommend the book if someone's struggling with, people not doing it as well as you want, so you just jump in and do it. I'd recommend the book Radical Candor. Yes.
Yes.
And when I work harder at giving good, candid feedback, the work gets better, and that allows me to keep up here instead of just jumping in and fixing it myself. So.
Well, thanks, everyone. We're beyond time, right? Yes, okay. Time for lunch, and thank you all for sharing with us, and thank you all for inspiring us. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.